Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by AcousticHealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Welcome to this quantum conversation. We are talking about one of our most fascinating topics, and that is hypnotherapy. Not only hypnotherapy, but past life regression, future life regression, and parallel lives. My guest today is world-renowned Dr. Bruce Goldberg, who has been in the mainstream media with this topic. And that's what makes it so promising, because many of us watching truly understand the power of hypnosis and how it truly connects us to our higher self. Let's welcome Dr. Bruce Goldberg to this quantum conversation. Hi, Dr. Bruce.
Hi, it's a pleasure to speak with you today and to educate your audience on the powers of the mind and the empowerment, using your subconscious mind with a connection to the higher self to take charge of your own life.
Take charge of our own life. That is the key. That is the path forward in this new earth and the new energies that we're in. And we're going to talk all about that, because your teachings show people how to really do this themselves and go on this deep inward journey. And first, I want to thank you for your incredible work in the world. You have testimonials from Oprah, Phil Donahue, George Nuri. You've been on these shows many times. I've even seen a clip with you on Sally, Jesse, Raphael. It's amazing, the mainstream media. So that's pretty cool that you were in this mainstream media. You are in the mainstream with hypnosis.
Let me give you an example of a mainstream media aspect here.
Yes.
So several years ago, I was invited to do the Jerry Springer show. And this is before they had the fights on the set, so this was when the show was more normal as a talk show. Jerry is an attorney. He was, mayor of Cincinnati and a newscaster for an NBC affiliate before he did the talk show. Jerry was very skeptical about my field, but obviously he wanted to be on there because it's of interest to the audience. So as part of the show, the producer said to me, how would you like to take Jerry into a past life prior to the show and to see whether, he can do it? Now this is, Jerry's not a new ager, okay? So I said, fine. So I worked with him in the green room prior to the show, and he went back into not only a past life, but I took him forward into a future life. And so here's mainstream, and we can talk a little bit about his karmic purpose here in reference to Jerry's past and future lives. Would you like me to discuss that for a second?
Yeah, that was so cool and very fascinating. And again, I just have to say that that you're doing this in a mainstream media where you could very easily be ridiculed, and that takes a lot of courage. That's what I want to commend you for.
This is the law of attraction. There's a lot of skeptical people in the media, especially the quote mainstream media. But it doesn't bother me. I'll give you one quick example before I talk about Jerry. So in 1994, CBS did a television movie called The Search for Grace, which was on my second book. It's a documented case of reincarnation. Very quickly, the woman was a single woman dating a married man who tried literally to murder her on 3 different occasions, and she couldn't break up with him. As I did 46 past life regressions on her, the most I've ever done on a patient, she was murdered by the same guy in 20 of her 46 lives. Okay. Well, she was obviously able to overcome that through the work that we did. Now, so later that summer, I was in San Diego doing a promotion for a workshop I was doing for a company there. I was doing workshops, and I was on the show to promote it. It was the early news for the CBS affiliate. So there were 3 people on the news team there. One of them, his name is Thomas. There was a woman and 2 gentlemen. One of the guys and the woman was very protagonist to my work. They loved my work. They were great. They were very nice and competent. The other one is, Doctor, my name is Thomas. Think of me as a doubting Thomas. And he said, I don't believe that reincarnation that you did was accurate. I mean, she could have just made it up. And I said, but Thomas, what you didn't read in my bio is that CBS independently documented the life with the information that I gave. And a couple of the factors she gave me in trance were not accurate to the newspaper reports. She was right, the reporters made errors. It's the most documented case of the last century. So all of a sudden, the other two newscasters say, Thomas, yeah, we did that. He's correct. CBS did the documentation. So then Thomas kept quiet for the rest of the interview. Let me go back to Jerry. So Jerry,
Yes.
I took him back into the about the year 1600, give or take, and he's like he's a swordsman who's like a police guy. He's like a knight patrolling the areas around London. Okay, so him and his colleagues, his merry men, as I would call them, they see this woman, this damsel in distress, being attacked by a bunch of swordsmen that were people trying to rape her or hurt her, whatever it was. So Jerry and his men, of course, were there to protect her, but they were outnumbered. So the bad guys here actually stabbed Jerry in the side, didn't kill him, but severely wounded him. And eventually they left, and the woman that he saved was okay. He was taken back to the local castle where this woman lived, and he wasn't able to be a knight anymore. This woman nursed him and then let him stay in the castle for the rest of his life. Okay, when I did the end of the regression, I said, if the woman that you saved and eventually who extended your life is somebody you know in this life, who, he said, it's his current life daughter. How's that? Kirsty. So here's karmic family values. Now, in Jerry's future life, he's a man named Montana Bobby in the 21st century, actually almost 22nd century. And he is a farmer and in Montana, and he's providing food stuff. They're doing artificial environment, etc. So he goes back and forth facilities from the earth to the moon with his farming mentality. One day, on the way coming home, his craft crashes and he dies and drowns. Now, why is that relevant? Because in this life, Jerry has hydrophobia. He has a fear of water. If he goes to a country club and tries to dive off the board, he's freaking out. So the cause of his phobia is not the past, but the future life. So that's Jerry. Yes. This is called Future Life Progression. My first book, Past Lives, Future Lives, which was published in 1982, it's the first book ever written on taking people into future lives. The way I developed that book in the field was that years ago, this is over like 40 years ago, I asked the patient to go to the origin of a problem. I didn't say go back in time. I said very specifically to the subconscious computer, it's very literal. I said, go to the origin of your problem. She went to the 23rd century. That was the origin of her issue. And that was the origin of past lives, future lives, and my work with progression therapy. So let me explain what hypnosis is so people can understand what we're dealing with. Hypnosis is a natural state of mind. We call this an alpha brainwave. If they do meditation, biofeedback, it's all the same thing. These are alpha brainwaves. So think of a daydream. Let's say you're watching television or a movie, or you're on the computer, or you're driving on the freeway and you're passing by a whole bunch of exits on a routine trip, but you don't remember each of the exits. That's a daydream level, which is also medically, neurologically, an alpha brainwave. So we go through hypnosis for 4 hours during the waking day, broken up into 5 and 10-minute intervals here and there. And then at night, when you go to sleep, you actually dream for 3 hours a night in the REM cycle. So that's 7 hours a day, almost 1/3 of your life you're spending in hypnosis. So if you think of the characteristics of focus, concentration, you're relaxed, and we call that time distortion. So that's a typical example. And what I just mentioned are examples of hypnosis. So the only difference between me versus your normal natural levels is I'm using it therapeutically. I'm dealing with the subconscious mind and training it, which is the soul. That's what the subconscious is. It's electromagnetic radiation, like a TV signal or radio signal or a computer signal. And we're training you to access the perfect part of your soul, which we call the superconscious mind, or the higher self is the more lay term that's used in the literature. And by doing that, the higher self is perfect energy. It comes from the God energy complex. Your subconscious is compromised. So by connecting you to the higher self can raise the quality of your soul's energy, just like an immune system, like an energy immune system, and make you immune to the issues you were previously vulnerable to. So that's where the basis of my therapy is called the Superconscious MindTap, to train them to access the higher self. Now, you can do many things with this. By the way, anyone can do this. You don't have to be special. You can remove the fear of death, the psychic empowerment by eliminating habits and phobias and all kinds of issues. Access your higher self to perceive your own past and future lives. We call this reading the Akashic records, which is like a fifth dimensional record of all your past, present, future, and parallel lives too. There are parallel universes. And I actually train people to go into the parallel universes and sometimes even switch tracks if they're not happy with their life now. And that's called the New You technique. And I have a whole series of techniques and books and CDs, etc., devoted to that concept. So this is really kind of fun. But I'll show you how this can be very relevant to even significant issues. Back in 1996, I was working with a woman. She was a recent graduate from college. I call her Tammy, not her real name. And she, this was early June. She wanted to learn how to go out of the body because I train people to do out of body experiences. Okay. So when you go out of the body, by the way, you're in the space-time continuum. So all past, present, and future lives are simultaneous. So you can perceive anything. The summer in July in Paris to meet her and spend some time and then go to graduate school in the fall, right? So I work with her. She's a great patient. But while she's in LA for that week, she sees events that occur a day before. In other words, she goes into the future because she's out of the body, and she sees an event on a Wednesday, but now it's Tuesday. And when Wednesday comes around, the event actually occurs. So she has a great track record of perceiving her future. Okay, so now we fast forward into the end of June. She calls me up now. She's gone now. She's back in New York City. She calls me up. She goes, "Doctor, this is Tammy. I have an emergency." And I said, "Tammy, I retired from dentistry to get away from emergencies. What's going on?" And she said, "I was using your CDs to go into the future. I want to see what my trip is going to look like." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I see myself taking off at JFK on the jet. The plane goes up in the air, immediately crashes. Everybody dies, including me. What do I do?" And I said, "Tammy, I don't want to run your life. I'm here for psychic empowerment, not codependency. And call me at the end of the summer." So I don't hear from her until the end of August. She calls me up and she goes, "Doctor, this is Tammy. I just want you to know I had a great trip." And I said, "Great." I said, "So what happened with your plan?" She goes, "I want you to know that I was originally going to go on TWA Flight 800 on July 17th, 1996. TWA Flight 800 left JFK, went up in the air, immediately crashed. All 230 people died, passengers and crew. She would have been 231 had she not changed her flight plans. So this is how going into the future, not only is it not dangerous, but you could actually save your life."
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Really amazing. All right. So you've got some really cool techniques. We're going to talk more about that. Here you are, a dentist. You were traditionally educated in dentistry. How did you make that bridge? What happened in your life to take you into the hypnosis? And then you boldly went into it. That's really quite amazing. What happened there?
So I went to the University of Maryland School of Dentistry, which is the top-rated dental school. And what I wanted to do was to use hypnosis for medical purposes. Apprehension and pain control are the medical uses of hypnosis. Now, University of Maryland, no dental school teaches hypnosis, nor does the medical schools, okay? So, so I graduated, but I was actually learning how to do hypnosis during my senior year. Now, what happened was that I knew that I really didn't think of making a separate practice in hypnotherapy. I was just going to use it in my dental practice. But at the time I had gone, when I was in dental school in Maryland and Baltimore, I'd gone to a New Age bookstore that was what we call New Age today. And I got a book here called The Search for Bridie Murphy. This was a documented case of past life regression that occurred in the 1950s in Colorado by a man named Maury Bernstein, who later became a friend of mine. And it was a documented case. It was brilliant, and it got a lot of attention. Of course, it got a lot of negativity from the mainstream Catholic Church and a bunch of other people. You can imagine 1950s, okay? But it just got me. I said, this is interesting. I'm curious. If I can use hypnosis to take somebody into a past life, fine. If it doesn't work, I'll just use it in dentistry. So I developed a part-time practice. And when the first real patient that I worked with was a woman who I knew pretty well, and she was a social work student. She was going to be studying therapy. And I just wanted to experiment with the technique. So I took her into about 9 different lives. What I didn't know about her, because I didn't know her all that well, was that she had 2 habits and a phobia that I didn't know about. As a result of just experimenting, not trying to do any therapy with her, she overcame both habits and a phobia. So I said, wait a minute, this is the universe trying to tell me that this is a very important clinical regimen and this needs more work. So then I decided after graduating from dental school, and then I had a residency. When I came back to Baltimore, I was in Florida for residency for a couple of years. When I came back to Baltimore to open up my practice, I opened up a part-time. 2 years later, I made the dental practice part-time and the hypnotherapy practice full-time. And then a couple of years later, I had the progression example with that woman from the 23rd century. And then I started working on writing the book, Past Lives, Future Lives, etc. And then my evolution, as I call it, went from doing regression to progression, out-of-body experiences, working with UFO abductees, and then time travelers from our future. So that's been the evolution of my 44 years in this field.
What a perfect sacred number, 44 years in this field. That's quite amazing. So you've also produced a lot of courses, MP3s, CDs, and videos that people can use in their own life to do this past life regression, which actually heals them of physical ailments too, right?
Yes, with the CDs or the MP3 files, they're always psychically protected. So one of the examples of that, many of the problems people have today are due to the vast amount of negative energy that surrounds the universe. Okay, and during my workshops, I talk about the lower astral plane, which is our psychic attackers, things like that. So people who have nightmares, that's a psychic attack. People who have depression, very often psychic attack is relevant to that. Sometimes what we call energy vampires, people and their friends and family that just drain them by their very presence. We call those people energy vampires. So all my techniques, they're protected by, we use various balancing the chakras and various techniques to protect them. Now they can go into the past lives, okay? They can go into future lives or the future of this life. They can access their higher self, which is always the thing to do. They can explore parallel universes too. They can select their ideal past if they want to do that. They can contact the more positive extraterrestrials in the fifth dimension, like the Pleiadians, etc. They can meet a time traveler from our future in the fifth dimension. I want to use a term. I want to educate your audience. The term that we use when you go out of the body is ultra-terrestrial. It's called ultra-terrestrial. That means you're traveling in the fifth dimension. And there are many people or entities you can meet in the fifth dimension. A departed loved one, you can meet them because they're in the fifth dimension in between lives. You can meet spirit guides, angels, your higher self, people practicing astral voyaging or out-of-body experiences techniques, people having near-death experiences. You can see some of those. The Pleiadians are some of the more positive ETs that are there. So you can actually use going into the fifth dimension to overcome bereavement. Too. If you have a departed loved one who's on the lower astral plane, you can train them to go to the upper astral plane. And therefore, when they do that, the negative energy that they're sending to their loved ones because they're panicking in a very bad dimension is gone, and you can remove bereavement from everybody on the earth plane. So there's so many things you can do. And again, this is the point of all this is not to be codependent on me, but to train them to do this themselves. I use the term self-hypnosis. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis.
We've got a lot to talk about, but one of the things that you said that really strikes our fancy is that the access to the higher self is always the way to go. And that couldn't be more said, that beautifully said. That really is the way to go. So you also call that the Superconscious MindTap. And this is what some could even say is the quantum field, where we can make quantum leaps and quantum jumps. Can you share a little bit more about the higher self? When you see people's higher self come in and communicate, describe what that's like. There's a confidence to that, right? There's a knowingness.
Okay, well, when people talk about like spiritual experiences, okay, they talk about they saw the white light. They always use the term the white light. Now, the problem in the literature, as well as a lot of my colleagues and things that I really don't like, is why don't people define when you see the white light, that's the higher self. It usually represents itself as a white light. Now, it can also be a religious figure. It could be a Moses, Buddha, Jesus. It can be a departed loved one, a mentor. Could be like an Einstein or Tesla or whatever your mentors are, whatever you like. So it represents anything that will make you feel comfortable. So when you have that connection, it can do a lot of things. If you have a medical issue, it brings in spirit guides. Spirit guides are specialists. So if you have a medical issue, a biochemical issue, we bring in what's called the chemist guides Those are special kind of guides for that. And if you have a relationship issue, they have a relationship guide. Abundance issue for income. I call this karmic capitalism is the term that I use, to attain abundance while growing spiritually at the same time. So if you have, whatever the issues are, there's going to be a spirit guide that's going to be a specialist. Your higher self coordinates that. So it brings in the right guide at the right time. So people very often, the higher self is not just going to, it's not going to be like a loudspeaker at a Kmart. What's going to happen, it's going to give you a little cognitive insight, a thought, that maybe you should do something completely out of the ordinary. So if you're just doing some research or reading or relaxing, and all of a sudden you get a thought that says, you know, I should go on the computer, go on Google, and I should look this up. And even though it's not what you were thinking of doing, it's out of the bailiwick, so to speak. That's your higher self communicating with you. It can bring people into your life. It can bring not just a loved one, it can bring a colleague or a business opportunity or something that benefits your life, but it's not going to interfere. So it's going to be something that is very subtle. So you have earth plane responsibilities, because if you did it the other way around, people wouldn't get out of bed if they could contact their higher self all day long. It's perfect energy and there's no stress or complications, but you have goals and procedures that you have to do on the earth plane. That's why it won't interfere.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so we always love to say for people to just do what they love, begin doing what they love, and connect inward so deeply that they have that higher self guidance and that inspiration. So that's beautiful. Thank you. It really
By the way,
is.
I also appreciate the term quantum with it used in your material. The basis of this field is actually quantum physics, which is called quantum mechanics technically. And so it's a very relevant aspect. Without quantum mechanics or quantum physics, this field wouldn't exist. So it's a very relevant term. It's a very accurate term.
It's very accurate. And again, the super conscious mind is really it. And when we access that, all the information is there. And that's what is known as we know what we know within ourselves, right? So that's why this work that you assist people to facilitate for themselves is so important, because it's where all of the creation of a new life exists, right? If we can get out of the subconscious programming that keeps us, the past life issues and glitches, and actually call on the skills of other lives, that's really, really powerful.
The other thing is that to show you the psychic empowerment part, when I'm doing my therapy with patients, I always make this announcement when I do interviews. Unfortunately, most people don't listen to this. And this is what I mean. I'm doing 1% of a person's therapy. They're doing 99%. So when I do an interview on radio and a person calls in and says, Dr. Goldberg cured me last year, I said, no. Remember the conversation. You did 99%. It's your higher self that does the therapy. Yeah. Even, by the way, in my book, Soul Healing, I have cases of cancer and AIDS that were cured as a result of the therapy. Now, I didn't do it. The patient's higher self did, you see. And those were incurable diseases. In this case, they were done many years ago, and these people are still alive. So the higher self can do anything because it's creative energy. It comes from the God energy complex. Therefore, it's creative. There's no limits to it. It's perfect energy. And by connecting with it, you can't lower its energy. It's always going to be perfect. What you will do is to raise your energy. So you can't compromise yourself. So no lose situation is the key here when you do the Superconscious MindTap.
Yes. Well, we are going to do a special event with you. It's a Mastery Empowerment course, which is a live webinar, and you're going to lead us through a group regression and a Superconscious MindTap. So that's coming up. And we also are going to talk about some of the products that you have, MP3s and DVDs. But let's first talk about what that's like on a group level. Yes, you can regress a whole group.
Well, what I do is I do what's called a group experience. And let me show you what I mean by the experience. What I would do is I train them to access the higher self, and then I do what's called a scan of past lives. I'll say, go back to a past life that will help you to learn what you want to learn about yourself. Some people want to learn about just their talents, natural talents. Other people about relationship with family members, why they chose the occupation they have today. So I make it very open-ended. I don't leave them on. I don't say go back to the Renaissance. I say go back to a life that will help you to learn about your karmic purpose. Then I do that, carry them through that, and then we go into the future life with the same instructions. Go to a future life that will help illustrate your karmic purpose and see how you've grown. And then the last thing I do is a superconscious mind tap to help them to connect with the higher self so they can use that in the future for healing, spiritual growth, information, whatever they want to do. So they get the big package, so to speak, of regression, progression, and superconscious mind tap. And when they're doing this, by the way, they can also explore parallel universes. That's a lot more complicated and more special technique, but they're in the fifth dimension. Remember, we live in a three-dimensional world. Anything beyond time is the fourth dimension, according to physicists. They use that in the math. And then anything beyond time is the fifth dimension. So we live in a fifth-dimensional universe. The problem is our eyes and ears, etc., can only see or hear in three dimensions. But once you go out of the body into the astral or of the spiritual senses, now you can perceive entities in the fifth dimension that you can't see now.
Spiritual teachers have told us that we are moving more and more into the fifth dimension as we embody our higher self. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what they're saying is that we're moving into the spirituality. It's sort of like if you ever study the Aborigines in Australia, they spend most of the time out of the body. They do their meditation and they leave the body a lot. What they're really saying is that we have the potential and we're using more techniques now, which is more accepted, by the way. Even in mainstream media, you have people on with doing meditation, etc. They invite me on. I've been on television for 40 years, okay? And these are mainstream outlets for the most part. So they realize that they do it because it sells, because it's ratings, and that's okay. That's their mentality. I do it because I like to educate the public. So the public is much more open-minded. This is not the 1950s, okay? They're much more open-minded to the idea of expanding into the fifth dimension, growing spiritually, becoming less codependent. To me, in my practice, I never prescribe drugs. I get people off of drugs. So some of my doctor colleagues don't like me because they think I'm competition, but I'm more interested in the patients rather than prescriptions and pharmacists. So I get them off of meds because most of the medication you get are symptomatic. Medicine can't cure anything. All it can do is treat the symptoms. The cure is actually removing the cause, which is energy. So we're an energy being. We have a physical body, yes, but our soul, which is pure energy now, not perfect energy, but it's pure energy. It's electromagnetic radiation, just like a television or radio signal or computer signal, that has an influence on the physical body. So when people have an issue that's, quote, medical, and then you use the energy for healing, the subconscious mind or soul, which is not part of the body but occupies it, now can affect the emotions, hormones, etc., which is now the physical body. So that's a three-phase system. The energy of the soul affects the emotions, which affects the physical. The emotions and the physical is what we call psychosomatic medicine.
And so the hypnosis, the awareness of that past life shifts the energy, clears it, and releases it. And that's about, would you say, that's 95% of the work?
Well, connection, let me just make a correction here. When people go back into past lives, let's say, for example, somebody had a past life in which they were bludgeoned over the top of the head by somebody in a murder, and now they have migraine headaches in the current life. So you can make a correlation of the two, but let me tell you something very important now, because I'm going to go against a lot of my colleagues by saying this, okay? I have a lot more experience than them. You say, well, the knowledge of the past life of being bludgeoned to death, now the migraines go away. No, that doesn't work that way. Rarely will that happen. The only way to get rid of the migraine is you can review the past life, which is really not necessary. You want to connect with the higher self. The higher self, because it's perfect energy, will then now bring the soul's energy up to a higher level. You don't even have to do the regression to get over the issue. What you need to do is connect with the higher self. So this is where the Superconscious MindTap is a very valuable healing technique. You don't have to go through zillions of past lives. I've done over 35,000 regressions and over 18,000 patients. So I know the difference. And by using the Superconscious MindTap, it's much faster, much more efficient. And the patient is under a lot of pressure, like, well, I have to see the scene or get this information. And it's very tedious and long, very hard to do as far as time is concerned. Whereas the Superconscious MindTap is much quicker, more reliable, and much more efficient.
Wow, that's really incredible. Again, it's really what needs to be done. The power of the higher self and the power of going within to make that connection. Again, we're going to be doing that super conscious mind tap in our event with you. It's quite beautiful that we're going to be here on Zoom, and we'll talk about that in a little while. I do want to share more about the spirit guides and divine surgery. You said something really fascinating there, that we can work with divine surgeons, perhaps, or call on
Okay.
healers.
These are called etheric plane surgeons. So let me explain what the technique consists of. We have many dimensions that we live in. We live in the physical or earth plane. Okay, the next dimension beyond the earth plane is the astral plane. That's what most people are familiar with. Beyond the astral plane is the causal plane. Causal plane is the tiniest of all the dimensions, and that's where the Akashic records are kept, okay, of our past, present, future parallel lives. We can access that from any dimension. Beyond the causal plane is the mental plane, which is where the masters would hang out, the Jesus, the Buddhas, the Moses, etc. Okay, then beyond that is the etheric plane. Now, let me tell you the difference. It's very important here. Every dimension has a sound to it. The sound in the etheric plane is buzzing of bees. It's a very subtle sound. It's characteristic of a dimension. When you go into the fifth dimension, to any dimension, you have to occupy a spiritual body. So, for example, when you go to the astral plane, the soul occupies the astral body, which is taller, thinner, and younger looking than the physical body. So people like that. That's why the astral plane is so popular. When you go to the etheric plane, you enter with your soul occupies the etheric body. Now, why is that relevant? Because the etheric body is the only spiritual body that's identical in size, shape, and format to the physical body. Without the etheric body, a person would die instantly. You never have to worry about that. It's always fine. But here's the deal. If you go into the etheric plane and then you summon an etheric plane surgeon, which are weird tadpole-looking entities, they take you to an OR in the fifth dimension, and they do light and sounds and all kinds of unusual techniques. They heal the etheric body. And the technique that I do here is to, when they come back to the earth plane, is to transfer the healing from the etheric body, which is identical to the physical body itself. And that's how you can actually heal, like the cancer and AIDS case, for example, lupus and all kinds of other incurable diseases, at least at the time, were healed, or anything. You can deal with anything, any kind of disturbance. So this is called etheric plane surgery, which is a really ancient art. It goes back to the mystery schools of ancient Egypt and Greece and Persia and Rome, etc. They just use different names. So I updated it and made it more westernized and more efficient for the average person to use. But the etheric plane surgery is a brilliant technique. It's the universe has given this to us. I didn't invent it. I just discovered it. You see, like man didn't invent electricity or fire. We just discovered it.
Yes, thank you for that. Incredible work. So then the higher self has the ability to scan the etheric body and heal it, right?
That the etheric plane surgeons are the one that actually do the healing. The higher self can actually help you on minor issues. It can do what you just suggested for minor issues, but if you have a big issue, a major problem, then you have to go to the etheric plane surgeons because they have much more sophisticated techniques. Remember, the higher self, even though it's perfect energy, is more of a referral. It brings in spirit guides on the earth plane to help you. It brings in the etheric plane surgeons. It helps you with that. It will take you to a learning temple on any of these other dimensions if you go out of the body to help you review your Akashic records of what your past and future lives and parallel lives were. So it's sort of like a general practicing physician referring you to a specialist is the way the higher self functions.
Ah, yes. Okay. All right. And you had mentioned earlier that we can communicate in the fifth dimension with fifth dimensional beings, fifth dimensional and beyond. And you mentioned Pleiadians. And so that's quite fascinating. How would you recommend people connect with their cosmic heritage? Would that be through a self-hypnosis that you direct the contact with the higher
Well,
self, or what?
I have a program called the Time Travelers Training Program, and one of the titles, it's a 6-title album. One of the titles is Establish Contact with Aliens. So that would be the perfect program for them to play, a perfect title. So what happens is that One of the things that you should know about the fifth dimension is when you're there, your thought creates a reality. So let's say you're in the fifth dimension and you want to have blue breath coming out of your mouth. You can do that. You can create reality. But the communication is all telepathic. People don't speak as we do. It's all telepathic. Okay? You can never harm yourself. You don't have to worry about being injured or death or anything like that. In the fifth dimension, you are fine because that's your spiritual body. You have your physical body here, which is, and by the way, when you go out of the body, people say, what happens to the body? When your soul enters the fifth dimension in dream levels at night, well, can't you be possessed? That's a very good question. The answer is no, because the soul leaves a clone of itself, like an alias on a computer, when it's traveling in the fifth dimension. So your body is always protected from any negativity or any possession attempts. You never have to worry about that.
Okay, good. And so the fifth dimension, describe that for us. It is not part of lower thought forms like fear, right? Are those lower density emotions out of the experience in 5D?
Okay, so let me have to separate two now. When you go to all these dimensions are positive with one exception. When you're in the fifth dimension, the only dimension you never want to go to is the lower astral plane. That is the source of psychic attack. That is a dimension that has negative entities. Reptilians are there, the Greys are there, all kinds of weird entities. You know, when people think of comic book characters like the Wolfman or Dracula or Pixies and Trolls or Superman or whatever, those are all actual entities in the fifth dimension on the lower astral plane. Okay, many of those are very negative entities. And so you don't want to be being bullied. It's a cheesecloth environment. It's hard to see. It's extremely negative. Now, that's the only negative dimension. If you go to the upper astral rather than the lower, you're going to create a peaceful environment. You may create, like we have on Earth here, you may create an environment that looks just like your bedroom, your city, your community. You can do anything you want. If you want the Taj Mahal kind of environment or Star Wars, you can do anything you want, okay? But they're all positive. You see, so you want to always keep away from the lower astral. So let me show you how you do this. This is based on the chakra system. Now, you know there are 7 major chakras that surround our physical body. If you leave through the third chakra, which is the solar plexus or belly button area, the only place you could go to is the lower astral plane. So you don't want to do that. What you want to leave is through the crown chakra, just above the top of the head. This is the 1,000 lotus petal of the East Indians. The heart, throat, third eye, and crown are considered to be the higher chakras, right? Just above the top of the head, because that's where the higher self meets the subconscious normally anyway. It's a much more efficient system. So you lead through the higher chakras, one of the higher chakras, let's assume the crown chakra, and then you don't have to worry about the lower astral plane. You're now going to go to the upper astral, which is going to be a beautiful environment. So here's some examples. If you go to the mental plane, where the masters hang out. The roads are made from dirt as we do. So if you're flying around or driving in a car, you can do anything you want on these dimensions. If you see iridescent blue roads, iridescent blue is the characteristic of the mental plane. So that's how you know you're there. And each of the dimensions have different sounds. I mentioned about the buzzing of bees on the etheric plane. The astral plane sounds like the roar of the sea. It's almost like putting a seashell next to your ear. Okay, you see, that's that's how you know you're on the astral plane, and they have different aspects to them. But it's the largest of all the dimensions. You see stars 24/7. It's a beautiful dimension. Going back to the mental dimension or plane for a moment, the homes on the mental plane all have abstract designs. It's really interesting. And the citizens all wear like white smocks. They look like angels as they're all doing their thing. That's how they're dressed. It's a very interesting dimension. And these are all very beautiful. Your higher self will accompany you. So it will be like your guide. It will help you. And of course, on any of these dimensions, you can go to learning temples where you can learn more about yourself and the universe itself. The universe has a Akashic record too. You can see about the Big Bang Theory and everything else. So these are very spiritually uplifting experiences that I always recommend people do.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the lower astral for those who may have this question. How do we protect against astral attack? And what is astral attack? Because someone could have a back pain, and that could be astral attack. So what's going on there? Is it just, or psychic attack, not astral
Mhm.
attack? What is psychic attack? Is that our own negative thoughts, or is it like our negative thoughts attract other negative thoughts, or someone else could be putting negative thoughts on us? What's going on?
Okay, well, there's a couple of combinations here. One is, let's say in your life, somebody dislikes you intensely. Okay, that person, they may not be practicing a black magic ritual, but they're just sending negative thoughts out to you. If your auric field has holes in it, which most people do, then you can be affected by that. Then there are people that actually practice rituals. These are black magic practitioners. These are really nasty people. Okay, they're not doing it by accident. And those are significant, but the big issue is the lower astral entities that are permanent residents of the lower astral plane. They hate us. They want to destroy us. They can't. All they can do is attack you in your sleep level. You can have, anxiety and all kinds of issues because of the experience you have there. So the first thing to do is to protect yourself. On many of my programs, I have a psychic protection from negativity CD or title, which allows them to not just do the white light protection, which is basic, but to actually balance the higher chakras. When you bring that in, now what you're doing is you're actually sealing the auric field so that you're protected. So even if somebody's attacking you with negative energy, it bounces off you like bullets on Superman, okay? And it goes back to the person attacking you, which is actually electric shock. So you're protected, and if they're trying to attack you, they'll be very seriously injured, and that gives them less incentive to keep attacking you.
Okay, very good. All right, and so that's psychic self-defense, yes?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, psychic self-defense.
That is part of the special offer that we have with you. That DVD is streaming online, and that will be part of our package. So that's pretty good. All right. Well, you've also got some DVDs. One is a popular one that everyone would love, Slowing Down the Aging Process. Tell us about what that's all about.
Well, that's a very simple process for a complicated technique. So let me just share about the process of aging. The reason why we age is only one reason why a person ages, and that is we're assuming now they've grown 21 years, the bones growth, et cetera. So that you got to assume that. The reason why you age is because the immune system breaks down. So a single-celled organism like an amoeba or a paramecium will live forever unless we destroy its environment. It's only got one cell, but we're much more complicated. So the body produces a substance called DHEA. Now, a lot of people have heard of DHEA. You could go to a health food store and buy this artificially produced. I think it's from sheep. Don't do it. Why? The body produces. I always believe in using the body's natural processes. So DHEA is eventually it becomes a sex hormone, either estrogen in women and testosterone in men. But in the intermediary phase, biochemically, it actually stimulates the T lymphocytes of our immune system, as well as other aspects of our immune system. So the more you produce DHEA, the more your immune system is powerful and the slower the aging process. So the DHEA is produced by the gonads and the adrenal glands. With the use of hypnosis, we can actually speed up the production. Now, when you're a woman's maximum production is at age 20. After that, it decreases. It degenerates with each year. With a man, it's age 25. So it doesn't matter how old you are. Obviously, the younger, the better. You can now use hypnosis to stimulate the production, to decrease the slowing down of the DHEA and to maximize its effectiveness. The idea of hypnosis stimulating DHEA has been demonstrated by Harvard University in research. So this is a scientific fact. Okay, it's not just a theory. All right. So DHEA, you don't buy it in stores. Use the natural DHEA, that God-given gift that we have. Just as an aside here, when I deal with my time travelers in the future, they deal with these kinds of techniques in greater numbers. The average person in the 35th century will live between 500 and 900 years young. So that's the extent in the future by using these techniques, which are much more sophisticated, of course. So you can actually reverse certain aging process. You can reverse losing weight. You can reverse liver spots, blood pressure issues. Those are reversible. And if you reverse those, you're going to extend your living processes. So this is the point of living longer and high quality, not being some doddering old man or woman. There are research at UCLA here in Los Angeles says that we should actually live to be 120. That's their conservative estimate. Others say 185, actually, if you look at some of the studies. So the average person dies when people live to be 80. What's the average life expectancy? 81, 82. Some people are 90, but most of them, by the time they're in their early 80s, they leave. Well, that's only 2/3. So why not stimulate the DHEA production, live longer and better? Look, I play tennis every weekend, and I've been around. I'm a septuagenarian, and I still play tennis every weekend.
Tennis, anyone? All right, beautiful. So self-hypnosis, it's really a powerful tool. And again, it's connecting with the higher self. I absolutely love that. It just reconfirms this importance of connecting with the higher self and embodiment of the higher self. So you've got another DVD here, and it's on soul healing. So tell us about that, because here it's more than just past life healing, right? It's deeper than that.
Well, I just discussed the concept of the DHEA production. Soul healing, what we're dealing with here is using the higher self, accessing the higher self, which can actually heal minor ailments by itself. You're connecting with the perfect energy, which raises the frequency, vibrational rate, or the quality of your subconscious mind to a higher level. On the more significant and serious issues, your higher self connection can bring in the etheric plane, surgeons on the etheric plane. So the point of all this is to use energy rather than drugs or surgery or chemotherapy or all the other radiation, all the things that people do. You can use energy. We are an energy being. Energy. Here's an example. I call this monistic idealism. It's an old philosophy which says your consciousness first, then consciousness created the world, not the other way around. So we are a pure energy being. So one of the things about this, and I mentioned this earlier just to reinforce it, when you use these techniques, especially when you go out of the body as an ultra-terrestrial, what you will do is you will eliminate the fear of death. Because what happens is leave the earth plane, the physical body does die, it fertilizes a lawn, I have no problem with that, but the soul then goes to a very complicated process up to what we call the soul plane, and then reincarnates. So you're never lost. You don't dematerialize into a black hole. The soul is eternal and indestructible. It's part of the God energy complex. You see, so that's why you can live your life positively, and the better you live your life, the more quality-oriented your future life will be. So it gives you incentive, like a schoolhouse theory, to go towards eventual ascension where you no longer have to reincarnate, which is the ultimate purpose of why we're here.
The ultimate purpose is to just know these lessons so well and perfect ourselves and be masters. And so thank you for all the courses that you offer that allow people to do this and go very deeply. All right. So you also said something earlier about abundance and calling on abundance. And I know that this is something big. So can you tell us about the energy of abundance and what people can do to really bring in the abundance of their soul?
Okay, well, I call this karmic capitalism. So what you're doing is, when you're doing your self-hypnosis, right before going to bed, I have a certain karmic capitalism technique, a title that they can use. And what they're doing is they're instructing the higher self to work on abundance. So now when you go into the upper astral plane, you go to what I call a sanctuary. It's like a conference room in the fifth dimension. And you're going to have a one-on-one with your higher self. Now the higher self is going to look upon the goal of, okay, you want abundance. So there are certain things it can do to help you, but what it mostly will do would be to bring in an abundant spiritual guide. You see, remember, it's the referee here. It's bringing in the guys like the general practicing physician. So the higher self will introduce you to a spirit guide that specializes in abundance. Now remember, there's the law of attraction. It's a very important universal law. Out the energy to increase abundance. And by the way, we're not talking about harming anyone else. You can attain abundance. Everybody can do this. It's not like a win-lose situation. It's a win-win-win, as I call it. So it's like if you invest in the stock market and the stock hits a big market, everybody wins who invested. Nobody loses. It's not the commodity market. So your higher self will bring in spirit guides, an abundance guide or two, to assist you, and that will send the energy out. Maybe it's a business opportunity, meeting someone that can help you. this kind of thing, you see, or avoiding things that could hurt your business situations. You see, sometimes somebody approaches you to be a partner with you in a business, and they're really trying to con you. So that your abundance guides will keep you away from that person. They will show their true colors, and therefore you can avoid a catastrophe. That's also part of karmic capitalism. So you're growing, you're attaining abundance, but you're growing spiritually at the same time. That's what karmic capitalism is.
Okay, I really love that. It's this growth spiritually, because in our world, things must get spiritual. Wouldn't you agree? In our world, things have to get spiritual. The journey of a human is to remember and connect with this higher self, right?
Well, I agree with the premise, but remember, I'm going to quote Einstein for a moment. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Right.
So it's not that the person must get spiritual. They have to work at it. It is not an easy system. There's a lot of bad people out there and bad situations, people trying to take advantage of you, whatever. So you have to work on it. The connection with the higher self will make it easier and more practical. But there are people that just make the same mistakes over and over again. I've taken certain patients into maybe a dozen past lives. They made the same mistake every life. They didn't learn. You don't have to learn. You actually it's an effort to learn and to benefit and grow from the experience that you had in the past.
Well, that's an insane world out there. Okay, so I say that in jest because, yes, we can keep doing the same things over and over, or we can look so deeply at ourselves that we change it and we change the patterns. That's what's really going on. And I just love how you said it's all in accessing the higher self. So for those who have trouble hearing the higher self, how would you recommend they hear the higher self? And if I may ask, in all of the sessions that you've done, what do you do when someone has trouble connecting with their higher self?
Well, of course, the answer to the second one first. I train them to connect with the higher self. It's not a complicated procedure. The reason why they have problems in the past is because they're either using techniques that they're not good at, or they just don't know what they're doing. This is a very simple technique. And when I work with them in session, of course, I'm training them in programming and doing all the fun things. So that's easy. Connecting with the higher self is not complicated. Now, as far as the way the higher self works, the higher self, it gives you a cognitive insight. That's one way it does it. It doesn't just say, by the way, this is what you should do. It won't do that. It will either give you a thought, a cognitive thought that is out of the ordinary sequence, or it will give you a circumstance, an opportunity that just presents itself. It could be a person, it could be a computer programming, a business opportunity. But let me show you an example about parallel universe switching as an example. I've done every single technique that I work with my patients on. So way back in the old days when I was involved with CBS for my television movie, The Search for Grace, of the documented case of reincarnation, when I was doing that, the network, I was told, was not going to air the movie. And the writer was a good friend of mine, and he was kind of panicking because he wanted to get this thing aired, as did I. So he said, they're not going to do it. And I said, I will fix it. He says, what do you mean? The network doesn't want to hear from you. And I said, I'm not going to speak to them. So I did my new you technique. I laid out my future frequencies, and I saw that the frequency, I'll call it number 4 out of a 5 sequence, was the one where it aired, and I switched tracks. I still had a pretty good life, but this life is even better. So I'm an example of actually switching into a parallel universe that was more ideal than the one from whence I originated from. So anyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, see, that's so fascinating, being in that parallel universe and being able to switch like that. Can we offer that meditation? Do you have that on MP3 or DVD?
Oh yeah, no, I have a series called Custom Design Your Own Destiny, which teaches you to go access the higher self, lay certain things out, and then there is Select Your Ideal Future is the very last title of that, so they can actually make the switch.
All right, that's beautiful. Okay, well, this is really wonderful. I'd like to talk more as we wrap up here. You've got the hypnotic time travel, and it's actually 2 Superconscious MindTap out-of-body experience and soul plane ascension. So this is all part of what you've already talked about as well, right?
Right. I go from simple to more complicated techniques. It goes from age regression to past life, future life regression, superconscious MindTap, basic out of body experience, and then, of course, the soul plane ascension. The soul plane is where you decide your next life and where you eventually ascend from. So it's a really interesting dimension.
All right. Well, this is a really interesting collection of self-hypnosis tapes and CDs, all in the digital world. I want to thank you for that. That's going to be included as an option with our event that we're doing. Both of those are just really cool. We're really excited to have you with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yes. All right. So I want to wrap up our show, but you said something really interesting. You do help people remember abductions or alien
Mhm.
experiences. And I see that you're going to be in a ufology conference in Laughlin, Nevada. So I'm just wondering, what is it that you do in that industry with hypnosis?
Well, I just came back from Laughlin this year. They had February as their conference, and I was
Okay.
giving a talk on time travels from our future. I'll explain that in a moment. I will be back next year again. February 27th to March 6th of 2021 is their annual conference, and I will be doing another presentation there. But the reason why the time travelers is of interest is because the time travelers are people, our species from the future that come back in time. Part of their team are extraterrestrials or grays and hybrids. So you can see the interest of the UFO Society in my work. Obviously, time travelers alone would be significant, but part of their team are extraterrestrials. By the time time travel is discovered and utilized by the 31st century, the extraterrestrials that are involved, like the grays and the hybrids, are all very positive. So it's not like today where these people abduct people, take sperm and egg samples, and give them post-traumatic stress disorder. That doesn't happen from time travelers. They're very spiritual because they're us in the future. The better our world is, the better it is for them. So they have no incentive to harm us, you see.
Yes. Okay. They're us from the future. And this may sound a little wild and crazy, but I actually know someone who remembers herself as a gray and is here. And actually, you look at her and she does resemble the shape of the face of a gray. Isn't that fascinating?
Well, if you study ancient Egypt, and I wrote a book on Egypt, Akhenaten had this long, elongated skull, if you look at the depictions of him, and that is not normal. And that is not your typical human. By the way, if you look at the average human being, let me just share something. Everybody has extraterrestrial genetics, okay? Extraterrestrials have been on this planet for millions of years. So one caller on a radio show I was doing said, "Doctor, is it true that this planet has been seeded by extraterrestrials?" So my response to him was that this planet has been seeded more than forest lawn. Okay, we've been seeded over thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Evolution is a very slow process. We shouldn't be here as human beings from single-celled organisms in a matter of a couple of billion years. It takes a lot longer than that. Actually, it's 500,000 years ago. It was nothing but hydra and little fish. Now look at us today. That's way too short a period of time. But if you seed the planet with preformed structures or DNA, etc., then you can have humans eventually come here. And look how different we are from any other animal. That is not natural. Okay, if you look at other animals, they're related, or some of them are. You don't see the extreme. Look what we did. You ever see an ant build a satellite dish? I mean, we do things that nobody else can possibly do. They may be able to lift one up. They're very strong per capita, but they can't build one. So
We need clothes. We have to wear clothes and shelter, right?
So my point is that this is where the concept of where the UFO societies are very interested in my work. But even the time travels alone, there's also underground military bases, there's abduction, there's all kinds of things going on that they're very interested in too. And they like to learn about it. They also like to learn about how to protect themselves spiritually, because there are ways in which you can actually avoid an abduction, and I train them how to do that. So just in case they are being potentially abducted by a gray, there are ways you can stop it too. And that obviously is of interest to them too.
Yes. Okay. All right, that's going down a whole nother rabbit hole, but we love you sharing on that and sharing on everything. So, oh my goodness, the Superconscious MindTap, out of body experience, soul plane, ascension, age regression, past life regression, future life regression. It's all part of the downloads that you have for our audience. We thank you for that. And we're looking forward to being in a live webinar with you. Welcome to the 21st century and this technology. That's pretty cool, right?
Thank you. I am looking forward for it too. I believe in, the future is now.
The future is
I think
now.
the benefits people can get, the benefits that people can get from it is the idea of obviously removing the fear of death, personal empowerment to take charge of your life and to access your higher self, read your Akashic records, overcome any issue that has been bothering you, to be a more empowered spiritual soul, abundance, karmic capitalism, improve your relationships. You can do anything that's humanly possible. So this is I call it a God-given gift that we have. The question is, why not use it? The body produces ethyl alcohol, it produces cholesterol, it produces most of the essential amino acids. Okay, so on a physical level, there are a lot of things our body does very efficiently, but it also allows us, using the alpha brainwave natural self-hypnotic technique, to grow spiritually and to empower ourselves.
That's what we're all about. All right, that sounds really good. And we feel really inspired and empowered just listening to this. It really is beautiful. And when we see the synchronicities in our life, that's when we know our higher self is in charge.
There's nothing by coincidence. I don't like the term coincidence at all because, there's an old expression, when the student is ready, the teacher will be there. But it applies to each individual. When you do things that work for you, it's not an accident. It's the universe has given us kind of a freebie here as a reward to help us grow. And if you use it, you're going to grow, and people around you will benefit too.
I love it, and everyone loves it too. All right, we're really excited to improve ourselves with this self-hypnosis techniques and to hang out with you on Zoom and be in this webinar, which actually is recorded, so if people can't join us live, they can still take part in this. So we invite our audience to check out the special offer button and the Mastery Empowerment course with Dr. Bruce Goldberg. Dr. Bruce, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been wonderful.
It is my pleasure, and I am looking forward to the seminar.
Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. Access all quantum conversations, special offers from our guests, and online healing retreats by visiting acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.